Highlights is the new compilation album from Canadian singer-songwriter The Weeknd, releasing just in time to coincide with his big Super Bowl performance. This performance and his last album After Hours caps off what has been undoubtedly the biggest year of The Weeknd's career so far. He has spent that time promoting and being fully immersed in the concept of his After Hours project. From having running narratives throughout pretty much every single music video to his now iconic red blazer, black shirt and tie getup, everything about this past year has been fully dedicated to this whole album experience. That dedication to a singular concept and following it through for such a long time is a rare thing to come by in pop, and especially for someone who is arguably the biggest pop star on the planet right now. The Highlights is a victory lap of sorts, making its way through some of the most significant periods and evolving sounds of The Weeknd's career. I myself have been listening to The Weeknd since I was about 14 years old, so most of these songs have been played to death for me. So instead of doing a traditional review, I'm going to go through the tracks and rank them from worst to best. One thing of note before we get into it, which I think is quite interesting about this compilation, is that he's chosen to completely skip over any track from his technically debut album Kissland, and I think this is a wise move considering that most Weeknd fans have kind of come to a consensus that that's the weakest in his catalogue. Coming in bottom at number 18 is actually a song that's not even The Weeknd's, and that's Ariana Grande's collaboration with The Weeknd, Love Me Harder. It's a song that is neither a good representation of Ariana Grande's growth in artistry or The Weeknd's artistry, especially with the super generic production and lyrics. However, the one silver lining is that it did kind of start off this trend of The Weeknd continuing to work with kind of synth pop instrumentals, and for that reason, I kind of have a soft spot for it. At number 17 is one of two entries from his trilogy compilation album, and that's Wicked Games. Wicked Games, even when I was growing up, when I was a teenager, it was always my least favorite on House of Balloons, and in the 10 years that has passed since then, it continues to remain my least favorite. It is so melodramatic, and I think it really sticks out like a sore thumb, especially alongside all the other down-tempo, very moody, textured songs on that project. Number 16 is Acquainted from his second album, Beauty Behind the Madness, and I think this is one of those Weeknd songs that is really carried by his vocal performance, because everything else is just full of those down-tempo, moody R&B tropes that were just everywhere in the mid-2010s. 15 is Die For You from Starboy. I must say that from number 15 onwards, every single song left on this album is one that I enjoy to some degree at least. I've always liked the spacey and otherworldly nature to the song, but the chorus does seem a bit clunky and out of place. At number 14, I've got the song Often, again from Beauty Behind the Madness, and although this came out on his second studio album, this is the sound that people really gravitated towards The Weeknd for in his days of House of Balloons and Echoes of Silence and Thursday. It's the Weeknd song that's basically just made for sex, as if there aren't enough of those already. But I think the sampling is pretty interesting and the hook is catchy as hell, and that's something that he would just get stronger and stronger at as his career goes on. Next at number 13 is Pray For Me from the Black Panther soundtrack compilation thing that came out a few years ago. Admittedly, I do like the song more for Kendrick's contribution and for the loud booming production than I do for The Weeknd's contribution. I would have liked to have seen their other collab, Sidewalks from Starboy, rather than this included on the Highlights. Number 12 is Earned It from both 50 Shades of Grey and Beauty Behind the Madness. And I think it's kind of a shame that this song is attached to such a piece of shit movie, because there are very few songs that are made specifically for movies that are this lush and dramatic. The orchestra and his trademark falsetto work perfectly in tandem to capture and create this sultry mood that they're going for. Number 11 is the first single that dropped for After Hours and one of his 5 number 1 singles, and that's Heartless. Metro Boomin, who handled some of the production, makes this song louder and larger than life, and even though Heartless isn't an accurate representation of some of the sounds that we got to hear on After Hours, it still just knocks like crazy. Save Your Tears is at number 10, another single from After Hours, and to this day I can't get it out of my head that this is just a better version of Post Malone's Circles. The Weeknd and 80s synth pop seems to be a match made in heaven, and Save Your Tears, like so many Weeknd singles, is just catchy as shit. Number 9 is The Hills, one of The Weeknd's most crucial and biggest tracks to date. It's the best example of his kind of singular sound of meshing these genres together, and I think he does it so well on this song that to this day, people still kind of struggle to really categorize what kind of song The Hills is. The other number 1 single from Beauty Behind the Madness is at number 8, and that's Can't Feel My Face. Admittedly, this song is essentially just about cocaine, but I don't think that stops it from being one of the funkiest and most Michael Jackson-esque songs The Weeknd has ever dropped. In Your Eyes is at number 7, and this is the strongest example of The Weeknd's embrace for this 80s synth pop, synthwave sound that he's been going for recently. It's the kind of song you would imagine hearing in the background in a club scene in Scarface or something, and it even comes with a cheesy saxophone solo at the end. I Feel It Coming with Daft Punk is at number 6, and this serves as the final track on Starboy. Funky and laid back in equal measure, but I think what really gets me in this song and why I've come back to it so much over the years is that Nile Rodgers inspired guitar lick. Number 5 is Call Out My Name from his My Dear Melancholy EP that dropped in 2018. Coming out between Starboy and After Hours, this is a throwback Weeknd track. It would fit perfectly on a project like Echoes of Silence. It's dramatic and it's extreme, but it has maybe the most emotional and vulnerable vocal performance that The Weeknd has ever delivered. I've always thought that Call Out My Name is underrated as a Weeknd song. I think it's just as well written as most of his other songs that follow this kind of aesthetic. Number 4 is Blinding Lights, without a doubt the biggest song of The Weeknd's entire career. It's hit number 1 in 34 different countries. Those swooping, fuzzy, buzzing synths give this instrumental a new dimension, an extra dimension, but it's The Weeknd's vocal lines and his melodies that really make this single stand out. Something about this song makes it as addictive as the high-flying life that he speaks of in this track, and it's very easy to see why it's become so wildly successful. I think it's still in the top 5 now, and it came out in 2019. Number 3 is the second entry from his trilogy project, and that is The Morning. Now, admittedly, the only flaw I have with this compilation album is it pretty much skips over Echoes of Silence and Thursday and House of Balloons. Whilst I'm of the opinion that those 3 projects still represent the strongest that The Weeknd has to offer, I understand that his biggest signature hits came years down the line after that. The Morning is a surprise inclusion for me because even when you look at the tracklist for House of Balloons, you have songs like What You Need and High for This that kind of started to break The Weeknd into the mainstream. Nonetheless, The Morning is a vintage Weeknd track. Those watery synths and tinny guitars make it sound like you're waking up with a fucked up hangover. Lyrically, he's more descriptive and actually quite funny at times than he's ever been before, particularly that drinking Alizé without cereal for breakfast bar. I may be biased and it may be at number 3 because I love this song so much as a teenager, but it's 10 years later and I still love it just as much. The runner-up at number 2 for me is Starboy, the first and title song from his 3rd studio album. It's still as slick, as moody and addictive as it was the day it dropped back in 2016. Again, Daft Punk completely kill it with the robotic, otherworldly production, and coupled with The Weeknd's rap and sung flow, it was just a recipe for success. From the music video to the lyrics to the sound of the song to him debuting his new hairstyle in the video, everything about Starboy signaled a new chapter in The Weeknd's career, and he would go on to hit even greater heights that most people maybe didn't think possible. Finally, my number 1 is the title track to his last album, After Hours. It's 6 minutes in length, it comes in 2 or 3 different sections, and it has no discernible chorus, but what it has is a bit of every sound and era that got The Weeknd to the point where he's at. The opening is down-tempo and moody as hell. It sounds like something straight out of House of Balloons before it kicks into something more high energy and high tempo. It's like a journey through and an amalgamation of the different sounds that The Weeknd has divulged in throughout his career. Like the album itself, like the compilation album itself, it sounds like a victory lap. Those are my rankings and thoughts on this new Weeknd compilation album. Let me know in the comments down below what you think, what your ranking would be. Make sure to like, subscribe, and dong the bell. And I shall see you next time.